Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are sharing with you what room you should book on Amtrak.
Have ridden in every room on Amtrak on every type of train, so we're going to break them all down for you, show you what they're like, give you the pros and cons, and tell you which one you should be booking. The first thing you need to know when picking a room is that Amtrak has two types of trains with sleeper rooms, and those are Superliners and Viewliners. Now the Superliners are going to be mostly on the West Coast that leave from Chicago, and the Viewliners are mostly on the East Coast. Viewliners are going to be any train that goes to New York. So the difference is that the Viewliners are only single level sleeping accommodations, and the Superliners on the West Coast, west of Chicago, are double-decker trains. And because of that, there's a lot less space overhead in a Superliner, so it's going to be a lot tighter than a Viewliner, and that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this, that not all these rooms are alike.
Right, there's actually quite a bit of difference between what's available on a Superliner and what's available on a Viewliner. So let's dig right in.
Yeah, the first category that we have is if you are, and we get this question a ton, you wouldn't believe it. If you're a couple and you both want to sleep on the bottom of the room, in other words, most rooms have like a bunk bed configuration, and a lot of times people don't want to sleep on the top because on a Superliner it is very tight, like we're talking
Tight.
that much space to sleep in overhead. So I sleep up there, no problem. I don't have a problem with it. She's tried to get up there and you would not do it, right?
No, I've tried it a couple of times. Every once in a while I give it a go and I'm like, let me try and see. And as soon as I get up, I get claustrophobic for the most part, and it's really quite tight for someone with my issue.
Yeah. So
thankfully, I have someone who does not have this problem.
So if both of you are like that and you both don't want to do it, it's kind of the same whether you're in a roomette or a bedroom on a Superliner. It's going to be tight. So if you both don't want to sleep on the upper level, the only way you can do it is if you buy two roomettes. And what you do, what we've seen people do, is you get your roomettes across the hall from each other, and then you both sleep on the bottom level. You leave the top level empty, and since a roomette is usually about half the price of a bedroom, it ends up being the same price as a bedroom, and you basically have two rooms then. So the only way you can do that is if you book them, you want to call in and request to get roomettes that are across the hall from each other, and they can do that for you. You just book them online, you're just going to get two random roomettes, and it's not going to work out.
Right. You can book it online if you want, but I would call as the second you book it. But it's much easier if you just call them and have them go ahead and set it up for you ahead of time. Normally we would just book in the app, but if I was trying to do that, I would just call them and tell them, hey, here's a situation. We want to get two roomettes. We want them to be across from each other, and they will get you set up perfectly. So that is definitely the way to go. And it's funny because we've actually seen that quite a few times.
Quite often, yeah. A lot of people do that, so don't feel like you're doing something weird by doing that. Mm-hmm. Now on a Viewliner, it's not such a big deal because on a Viewliner you can sit up in the upper bunk. We've got some videos that show all these rooms too, but we'll show you here. You can sit up. So the Viewliner, the only issue would be is if neither of you wants to climb up and down the stairs to get to the upper bunk, then you would want to do that little strategy. So that's the first one, and that's a good one for people. Second category is families. What is the best thing for a family?
Always tricky with families. Now, there is a perfect solution if you are riding in a train that's going to be a Superliner, but if you are in a Viewliner, it's a little, you have to kind of, jerry-rig it a little bit. So if you are in a Superliner, they do have a room that's called a family bedroom. It is on the lower level, and they only have one per train car, and it sleeps 4 people. Now, the caveat there is that it's essentially 2 adults and 2 children. So if you have 2 teenagers traveling with you, that's not going to work because the 2 children's beds go the short way of the room. So two beds go like this and two beds go like this. So they're, you know, kind of perpendicular of sorts to each other. So that's kind of the trick there if you're doing a Superliner. Now remember, you don't get to choose, obviously, if you're doing a Superliner or a Viewliner. It just depends, like Rob mentioned earlier, on where you're traveling to. So if you're traveling somewhere where you're going to be in a Superliner, the family bedroom is the perfect choice. But what about the Viewliner? What do you think we should do there?
Yeah, if it's a Viewliner and you've got a family, you really just want to get the 2 roomettes again, because you're going to only be able to put 2 people per room. Even in a bedroom, you can only put 2 people. We have seen like people put a baby in a bedroom with them, but if you have like 5-year-olds or higher, you know, like they're just not going to let them go in there. It's just too many people in the room. So you really, if you have a family, you need to get 2 rooms. We have seen from time to time parents that have older kids like ours, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they'll just get a room and put their kids in coach too. So I've seen that quite a bit. Don't know if I recommend that because the kids always look pretty cranky.
They do seem cranky.
Yeah.
We did. We had dinner one night with a couple who was traveling with their teenage daughter, and she was seated in coach, and they had a sleeper, and they kept kind of meeting in the middle in the in the observation car. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So the next category is going to be if it's your first time riding Amtrak. I would recommend for either Viewliner or Superliner that you go ahead and get a bedroom if you're just not sure what you're getting into. Now, if you know you can do this and you know you can be in tight spaces, I want to emphasize this is tight. This is not like a cruise ship room. This is not like, it's a train room and it's tighter than those things. So we have seen a lot of people get on the Roomette and they say, we knew it was tight, but we didn't know it was this tight.
It's really, I mean, it's quite tight, and it can be surprising because it is really hard to convey in a video. Like if you've seen our video of all of the rooms, which by the way is you can see a tour of every single room on both types of trains right here on YouTube on our channel. We have a tour of every single one. You can check that out on here. But even if you've seen those videos, it still looks bigger than it actually is. There's no real way to fully convey that until you get in there. And again, if you have trouble with tight spaces, now see, I have trouble with the sleeping portion of it, but I don't have trouble with the tight space in a roomette of just sitting in there. If we're sitting in there and it's made up for the daytime, that's fine. But once those beds come out, all of the space is gone. There's almost nowhere to stand.
No, there's...
I mean, literally one sliver, you can't both stand in there, is what it boils down to. I mean, we're talking about like essentially a closet with 2 beds that pop out. So just understand that it's really small. I really can't even explain enough that it is a small space.
Yeah, now, next category is going to be if you're on a budget and you're a budget traveler, and definitely the Roomette is the way to go because it's way cheaper. It's tons cheaper than a bedroom, and we love the Roomette. We actually get the Roomette almost every time. I think we've only had a bedroom
A few times.
3 or 4 times maybe, because the Roomette is fine for us. We're totally used to it, and I just like it. And it really does matter though if you have one of you that's going to be okay sleeping up top. Unless you're on a Viewliner, then that's amazing. But we don't have any problem, and when we first started doing this, we just didn't want to spend the money on the bedrooms. Still don't really want to spend the money on the bedrooms. So every once in a while, if we get enough points, we get a free bedroom, and we just take that. But if we're paying money, I don't think we've ever paid for a bedroom.
No, we've always just used miles.
Because they're pretty pricey for how much we're on them. So yeah, if you're on a budget, Roomette is definitely the way to go. And it's totally fine. We talk a lot about how tight it is, but once you're used to it, it's really an amazing experience.
Yeah, it's just, I think sometimes it's just grasping the reality of what you're seeing and what you're actually experiencing that is a challenge sometimes for people. So I think if you're okay with that, but we're pretty easygoing for the most part, so there's
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of interesting because like in every class of travel, everything is relative. Because if you get on an airplane and you sit in coach, you think, wow, this is tight, and then you walk up to first class, you're like, whoa, there's so much room up here, and I'm on this thing for 24 hours. But that's way smaller than even a roomette on a train. So really everything is relative. People pay way more to be on a first class flight than they do in a roomette. So, I think it's fine. It's just what your expectations are, and does that reality meet your expectation? So the next category is going to be if you're on a once in a lifetime trip, you've never done Amtrak, you're only going to do this once, what's the best possible thing you could do? And they do have a thing called a double bedroom. It's not really advertised, but it's basically just 2 bedrooms and there's a connecting door, and they can open that door and you have like a 2-room suite.
Yes, and so if you've ever been in a bedroom, you've probably seen that wall that goes in between your room and the room next to you, and it seems kind of flimsy, but it's because that door actually moves and it opens, so they can open it and lock it open, and then you'll have both spaces. So the complete opposite from the budget one. This one's going to cost you quite a bit. But again, if this is a once in a lifetime deal, you're celebrating, a big whatever anniversary, retirement, or whatever, and you want to really spread out and have great space, and you're going to be on there for a while, then this is going to be your best option, and it's going to be quite luxurious.
Yeah, it's a nice way to go. So it's basically just, if you know what a bedroom looks like, think of that twice, and it is going to be twice the price. Then another category is for if you have accessible needs, you really do want to try to get an accessible cabin, and these are easily the hardest cabins to get, we find. Because when you look to book online, which we book online all the time, you almost never see an accessible cabin available for any train that you're booking. You will see it every once in a while, and sometimes the best thing to do is just to call in. But my advice for the accessible cabin is, this is the cabin class with the greatest variety of what you'll get. And you have no idea what you're going to get, but you're going to pay the same price. So what I mean by that is, there is the best possible cabin on all of Amtrak, I think, is the Viewliner 2. And there's, in these trains, Superliner, Viewliner, there's Viewliner 1, Viewliner 2, which means an older train or a newer train. So there's really 4 types of trains. But the Viewliner 1 accessible cabins are not that great, not that big, but the Viewliner 2 are amazing. But all you do is book a Viewliner, and you don't know which one you're going to get until you get there. So we'll show you what the Viewliner 2 looks like. We'll also show you what the Viewliner 1 looks like. Just have your expectations in check, because a lot of people have seen our Viewliner 2 video, and then they get there and they somehow get a Viewliner 1, which there's nothing you can do about, and they're disappointed.
Yeah, again, that's, the expectation, and knowing that expectation and reality aren't always going to meet in the same place.
Yeah, and with the Superliner accessible rooms, they're both pretty much the same, and neither of them are as good as the Viewliner 2. So of the 3 there's 3 accessible rooms that are kind of and there's one that's like, wow, this is amazing. So,
yeah, it's kind of wild. And actually, we ended up in one, which is how we did the tour that we showed you. We ended up in one of those rooms because we were bumped, because we were only going to be on for a short amount of time. So they knew we weren't going to, mess around, and we weren't going to sleep in the room essentially. So they just said, oh, you guys can just use this room since you're going to be on it for a short amount of time. So we were able to do that tour for you guys, but we didn't book it. We were just basically got bumped into that room because somebody else needed one of the other rooms. And so it was amazing that for that opportunity, we were able to do the Viewliner 2, and she was explaining to us, oh yeah, the Viewliner 1 doesn't have this shower, it's not as big, and of course the Viewliner 2 is new, and so it's going to have, a nicer feel to it as well.
yeah, it's totally amazing, but really hard to get. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, everything you need to know about which room to book. If you are going to be going on an Amtrak soon, take a little time. If you need help, call them. Their customer service will help you pick the right room also. But that is basically what you need to know. We have other videos on the channel that'll help you make a decision also.
Yeah, well, if we didn't cover your situation and you want to know about that, leave us those questions down below in the comments. Give us a like and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.